Hi, everyone. Chocolate and Fluffy are playing downstairs tonight, so I can show you where that puzzling fog-like or smoke-like substance came through one of my office windows and was caught on last Wednesday's Earthfiles YouTube channel live streaming podcast. I began live at 7:30 p.m. Mountain, like I am right now. The puzzle occurred 2 minutes and 32 seconds later into my live broadcast and lasted for only 1 second on the videotape. I had no awareness of anything unusual. It was not until the next morning on Thursday, October 4th, that Lori Moriarty emailed to tell me that a viewer called attention to something in my Earthfiles YouTube channel video. Lori slowed the short puzzling video down a bit, sent it to me, and my first reaction was it must be an insect blurred in the live stream process. But the more I replayed it, the stranger it became. The puzzle looks like a piece of fog moving through that corner window right up there, briefly brightening a white painted wooden bookshelf and then rising straight up and was gone. I'm now going to walk. It's 12 feet from where I'm sitting to that corner. I'm going to walk to where that strange substance appeared on video, and I'm going to show you how high it is from where I'm sitting right now before the camera. Chocolate was in the office after I had just put him down to do news, and Chocolate ended up asleep on top of my copy machine, which is over there by the window. Now, follow to see. I'm going to come up these stairs, and I'm coming up. Here is the corner right here, and when Eric, my computer guy, and I studied, the odd puzzling fog comes in like at an angle from outside the window through, comes up, lighted a glowy part of this part of the bookshelf, and as you can see, there are no books up here. A lot of people emailed saying, well, what books were highlighted? There are none there. This is where this came, glowed, and went right up and disappeared. I would like all of you, if you could, to see the details of this fascinating 1 second video for yourself, because it is looped over and over now in my Earthfiles in-depth report that is entitled 1 Second Puzzle during Earthfiles YouTube channel live streaming podcast, Wednesday, October 3rd, 2018. And please see my video that goes into all of this with the loops at www.youtube.com/Earthfiles. And that has these repeating frames so that you can study the puzzling phenomenon. Now, I sent that video. I sent that video that Lori had slowed down a bit to a trusted Photoshop and video analyst who requests anonymity. And I also sent it to author Whitley Strieber. The analyst wanted to see the original video, and Lori sent it to him and to Whitley. The analyst looped the rapidly moving substance 20 times in close-up. Both men concluded that the rapidly moving puzzle is, as they said, anomalous, close quote. Here are Whitley Strieber's words from his email. I've now looked at it a number of times, and it is clearly not an insect or a bat or anything remotely like that. The only ordinary thing it could be is a puff of smoke or something that was smoldering, and that's not there either, like there's nothing off camera. Let's wait for an analyst to weigh in, but my vote is in. It's unknown, close quote. And here is the analyst's comment. I'm attaching the clip, which loops 20 times and then again in close-up. The wisp seems to be moving in a straight line, though changing shape to some extent. It's definitely not an insect close to the camera. If you view the clip in a QuickTime player, you can advance it frame by frame using your arrow keys to get a better look at it. At this point, I'd say it is definitely anomalous. And this is a man who studies videos and images for a living. Now, people began to send me emails about their own experiences with fog-like substances. One came shortly after the broadcast from Cynthia in Prince Edward Island, Canada. Quote, "Oh my God, Linda, this looks very similar to something I saw go by right in front of me just this evening. At first, I thought it was a trail of smoke, and I became a bit alarmed at what was smoking. But I didn't smell any smoke, and there was nothing in the room that could be smoking. I watched this go right by in front of me from right to left. It did not dissipate like smoke does. It just seemed to disappear." Here's an international email from Alexander in France. "Hi, Linda. About this phenomena you caught on tape. My first thought was, it looks like cigarette smoke, but it is moving way too quickly, and it comes with a spiral move. The smoke not only moves too quickly, but it seems to move by its own. All of it moves together like a ribbon, only to disappear at the end of its brief appearance. I have no idea what this is, but at first I was thinking it is an ethereal being or something from another dimension. Really strange. You got a visit from something, Linda." Now here is another international email from Denmark. Quote, "Hi, Linda, thanks for your fine work. The substance seen in the video was spiritual energy. I've seen this and other forms of energy all my life. Sometimes it is white, gray, or black. Sometimes our spiritual helpers or guides make us a visit. It's all a matter of energy vibration. Lower energies show up as dark with bad odors. Higher energy shows up in white colors like in your office and smell like flowers." Close quote. I got several emails from people who say that they are meditators or they work with people on trying to keep positive energies, and they all said the color of what appeared in your office was in the white scale, which everybody considered to be positive, which is interesting that there is at least a consensus among people who say they have seen things like this and that they are meditators. And here is a fascinating experience from Charles Hazard, who has allowed me to use his name, who lives in Tampa Bay, Florida region. Quote, "When I first saw your video loop of the puzzling white substance in your office, it reminded me of an experience that I had once in a mountain cabin of Arkansas. That home is very isolated with no light pollution, and on this night I enjoyed a crystal clear view of the night sky from my bed. Suddenly, a luminous, misty fog drifted toward me through the glass window, mesmerizing me and enveloped my head. That fog was filled with hieroglyphics, and it seemed alive. It seemed to answer every question any human could ever have asked. But afterward, I could never explain." Close quote. Charles Hazard is going to join me on my October 25th Coast to Coast AM Earthfiles Radio News update broadcast with many more fascinating details from the experiences that he had around the hieroglyphics and other experiences in his life. And in my Earthfiles report that will go with my radio broadcast on October 25th, Charles is providing sketches of some of the hieroglyphs and objects that he remembers in that extraordinary telepathic download from a piece of fog that came to him through the cabin window. Whatever that 1 second rapidly moving fog or smoke like substance was last week, let's keep moving forward into new mysteries and one of the strangest has emerged in Navajo County, Arizona, the end of September. Navajo County Sheriff is Casey Clark, and on September 28th, he did an interview with the White Mountain Independent newspaper in Show Low, Arizona. Show Low is only 20 miles south of Snowflake, Arizona, near the Apache Sitgreave National Forest, and it's a town called, and there is a town called Eber, spelled H-E-B-E-R, where Travis Walton was abducted by a diamond-shaped UFO from a logging site on November 5th, 1975, for 5 full days. To this date, that Arizona region of Snowflake, Eber, and the Apache Sitgreave National Forest is notorious for UFO sightings, animal mutilations, even Sasquatch and other high strangeness. What Sheriff Clark told the White Mountain Independent is that about 3 weeks ago on September 21st, 2018, his office received a 911 emergency operator call that a woman in the Antelope Valley, about 10 miles north of Eber, was pinned on the ground by a large black cow, and that whenever the woman tried to move to get away, the cow would press harder on her to keep her from moving. Sheriff Clark's deputy, Vincent Palazzolo, was ordered to the scene to help the woman and reported that the woman was still being held on the ground in an open field by that large black cow when he got there. Quote, when Deputy Palazzolo, a 5-year veteran of the sheriff's force and a rather large man, arrived, he began waving his arms and pushing on the cow in a futile attempt to get the cow off of the woman. He even tried unsuccessfully to use his taser as a noisemaker to scare the cow away. Ultimately, Deputy Palazzolo used a drive stun on the cow, which made it move away from the woman, who was then able to scramble to safety. But then the cow turned its attention on the deputy, charging him and knocking him to the ground as the stunned woman looked on, unable to help the deputy. This is a close quote from the sheriff. Now, the story goes on. The sheriff confirmed that the cow's head butted Deputy Palazzolo against his chest, covered by a bulletproof vest, and it hit the deputy so hard that Palazzolo fell to the ground, and then the cow stepped on the deputy's leg and on the deputy's chest. Palazzolo was able to fire off more taser blasts at the cow, and finally the cow ran off. People began to ask, why would a cow go rogue like this against the woman and the deputy? Further adding to the mystery is an update that a rancher living close to that area found 2 dead cows on September 9th, right in that area. And since then, county officials have done toxicology reports on 24 cows that died recently in the forest near Eber. They think it's at least 24. As soon as I can learn what those toxicology reports say, I'll report at Earthfiles and here on my YouTube channel. Now, last week, I asked if any of you had had an out-of-body experience or experiences when you were a young child in which you were aware that you were splitting in two. One part was your body on the bed or lying in a chair or on the floor or wherever, and the other part of you was rising or floating around your room or even going outside above your house. Well, tonight, I want to share just 2 of many dozen emails that I've received about childhood out-of-body experiences, and hope in our audience tonight there might be more of you who have had out-of-body experiences to share from childhood and on into adulthood. Several emailers are telling me that until right now, until my question about have you had as a child any out-of-body experiences, that they have never shared their out-of-body experience or experiences with anyone in their life before now, and responding to this question. And I think it is a very valuable issue to have dialogue with all of us together, because what is it that separates from the body? Is it the literal soul, or another layer of the body-mind complex that we still don't understand? And this might have a lot to do with these issues about what is it in the human mind that non-humans can so easily communicate with and or manipulate human minds. If we understood more about ourselves, if we understood more about what it is that is separating when we are children in two places at once, maybe we would begin to make some headway on what our relationship is with telepathic non-humans who can manipulate us so well. Now, let's start with an email from somebody called Mickey. Quote, this is what he's writing. You asked for people who have experienced out-of-body to email you. Mine was very brief. I was 10 or 12 years old asleep. I woke up and I was trying to open the door to my bedroom, but I could not grab the door handle. I began looking around and noticed a mirror on my left. In the mirror, I saw my own reflection, but I was levitating off the floor, and I could not really see my feet. I noticed my clock, which was facing the door. The time read 3:28 a.m. I then noticed my body asleep on the bed, and the instant that I saw my body, I felt myself being pulled back to it. As soon as I was back in my body, I sat up in bed scared. I ran, I turned the light on, and that's when I noticed the clock, which also read 3:28. But the face of the clock faced the door and was not visible from my bed. Since the time was the same as what I had seen in my out-of-body state just moments before, that was confirmation to me that I had really somehow left my body. Close quote. Another fascinating emailer said that when he was 5 years old in 1956 in Long Beach, California, that was his hometown. His parents had divorced a few years prior, and he lived with his mother and sister in a duplex. His out-of-body event began, quote, as I lay on my back, asleep on my bed in my darkened bedroom, I suddenly felt myself as very light, and I realized I was lifting upward above my bed. The sensation was an effortless peace as I floated maybe 4 to 5 feet in the air. I then began floating across the room toward the doorway, and my body must have rotated from a face up, like facing the ceiling, to a down position, as I was looking at the approaching doorway in a normal perspective. And I was floating horizontally toward the door, now looking down and out instead of toward the ceiling. I was now on the other side of the bedroom. It was then that I turned around to look back toward the direction from which I had come. And there, upon my bed, lay my young body, bathed in a wide column of bright white light. It was accompanied by another thin column of radiant blue light, reaching all the way to the ceiling. There was a sparkly quality to the white light, and its diameter was about the width of my bed. The more narrow blue beam was approximately 1 to 2 feet in diameter. This scene I viewed of my body instantly frightened me. I realized I'm over here, but my body is over there. Whether out of sudden fear or whatever, I was immediately jolted back into my body, not sensing any passage of time having come from across the room. I awoke crying in the now dark bedroom, and the out-of-body experience ended. Close quote. And now I would like to share with you what happened to me when I went to bed in the ages of about 6 to 7. I would always lay down on my back with my head on the pillow, looking up at the ceiling. It was what my mom called a cottage cheese texture. I would wait for a special feeling, and then part of me would just start floating upward. I was completely aware of my Linda body still laying on the bed and pillow behind me. But this other part of me was rising, and I was looking forward to getting close to that cottage cheese ceiling, because I could see when I got close that there was this blue light like the color of the stripe on a neon tetra fish, kind of glowing, really bright, intense, turquoise, greenish blue. And I wanted, as I'm rising, I want to go and touch that blue light. I want to get into that blue light. I want to keep going so that I get closer and closer, and that I can literally go into this beautiful tetra blue light. Every single time I get close and I'm seeing the blue light, and a thought voice would come into my mind, no, danger. You cannot go safely beyond here. And I would always be immediately back in my child body, laying on the bed in the pillow. And then I'd go to sleep. It was like an exercise that something was having me do every night for a period of my childhood. And I've always wondered why, especially because of that warning voice every time that would never let me keep rising into and through that blue, beautiful light in the cottage cheese ceiling and go through the ceiling and outdoors. Never. I was always stopped by that warning voice. If any of you out there have insights about why some of us would receive warnings as children while others went further beyond their bedroom and some even outside over their neighborhood, I welcome your insights and more firsthand, out-of-body experiences from you, because I think this is one of the most interesting subjects to explore and have dialogue with you, and to see how many people are emailing me and saying they have never, not with their parents, not with their siblings, not with their husband, their wife, the children, their grandparents, not with anybody, that they have never shared their out-of-body experience or experiences until right now with this question in this dialogue that we have on Earthfiles YouTube channel Wednesday nights. So I think there's something important here. And maybe we're all going to be able to learn more from each other in this dialogue. So I really encourage those of you who are out there thinking, yes, I've had an out-of-body experience, and know that I won't give a full name or an exact location. So you can talk with me as you would in private, but I can share it with our big audience. And Lori, now let's go to what the current questions are from the audience tonight, probably ranging from the puzzling white fog smoke from last week to out of body to any other subjects.
Great. Well, the first thing is, I think there was a couple of comments that you would need to clarify for your audience. The first thing is car lights.
Oh, yes.
People, and I don't think that they might not have seen the report. So could you explain why it can't be car lights?
Yes. From the windows going about 300 to 500 feet, as big or bigger than a football field. It's all trees and cactus. It's a gulch. It's the wild gulch that goes up to the big Sandia crest that overlooks Albuquerque, which is right outside of this other window in my office. So it's all trees. I tried to take photographs going through the window, and I can take some of them. I just never could get it to, it was through the window. It just didn't look right. So I showed the looking up from the terrace up the 2 stories and put that arrow in my report at exactly where the bookshelf reaches the window. So there's an outside photo. And I can try again to see if there is some way that I can show that it's just wild forest out there, and that every other window, that window in the corner where I climbed up, it does not move. It's structural. That's just a glass, the horizontal glass. The pane over next to it, you can grab a hold and move it about 12 inches, and there's screen. The next window is structural, does not open. The next window you can move a little bit, and it goes like this around the room. Every other pane is structural, doesn't move or anything. So that does not move, and none of those horizontals move. And right outside is the photo. For those of you who go to Earthfiles, go to my earthfiles.com report on this. And I don't think this photo is in the YouTube video. It's in my Earthfiles report. And you can see, looking up, it's about 20 feet from the ground up to that corner from outside. And then it's just gulch, forest, and cactus. So that's
and the next series of comments were, could it have been someone vaping or smoking in the office?
No, you can see there's nobody here but me, and there was chocolate in the office, and Fluffy was downstairs eating, but there's nobody else here, and I couldn't take a smoker around me for love or money. You all know how allergic I am, terribly allergic to juniper, and all things pollen, all things smoke, all things mold. If there was anybody, you can, if my brother were here, if anybody were smoking anywhere within 25, 30 feet of me, I'd be choking. That's how sensitive I am to it.
Someone else wanted to know, did this have any effect on the cats?
Well, Chocolate was in here right from the beginning, because remember, that big, beautiful cat, I held him for you all to see, and it's also in the open. You can go and see this whole video at the Earthfiles YouTube channel, uncut, nothing. It's all there, and you can yourself watch the clock go to 2:32. And I've introduced Chocolate, and I've sat down here, and I've started doing news. I wasn't aware of anything, and I knew at one point that Chocolate knocked over the wastebasket, but for most of the show, he was asleep on my printer, which is about 10 feet from me over in another side of the office. And that meant to me that Chocolate, he wasn't upset or noticing anything. And I'm a sensitive person. I usually can feel things that are in a harmful, negative way, and I didn't feel anything at all. I was shocked. Remember, Lori? I was shocked when you sent me that email and said, look at that video, and you sent the one you did slow down. I was amazed. But I think people who have communicated with me from a meditation background or from an Eastern Indian religious background or Malaysian. I've had many emails from people who have said that where they live, what their dynamic is that people who have passed on, it could have been my father or my mother in some way, Who knows how it would work? But the question that nobody can answer, let's say that there are other dimensional transports or transitions where people are that have passed on or in another dimension, and they can somehow come into this dimension, and then they might appear to us as smoke or fog. And I know that's been written about for centuries. And the question my left brain always has is, how would the physics work on this dimension of something coming from another dimension? Why would it even register as photons that we could see with our retina? That, I think, is a fascinating question. And it also goes to the out-of-body. How does the retina of the eye see what appears to be some other form of us out of body? These are all fascinating questions. If we knew more about all of this, we probably would have greater understanding of the phenomena that we call UFO. So,
and someone else wants to know, there are lights in the window now, so what are they?
From here. From here. Well, if I had the, let's see, can I do that? Look at all these lights in here. Can you see all that? I got lights all over the ceiling. Does that help?
I think so.
Does that help you understand?
They can let us know in chat.
Yeah. See, and there's a light on the bookcase. Look at all these lights. I've got tracks, 1, 2, 3 tracks of 12 lights in the ceiling. And then we have these floor. Now I'll never get the camera back. And then we have these, like there's a light on me that reflects, let's see, here it is. Do you see that in the door? My head blocks it sometimes. See that? That's a light that's on me. That's right there. And then there's a light over there that is on the bookshelf. And then out across, down in that lower left, you can see that is a road, and it's good that that's happening, those red lights. That is a road called Tramway in Albuquerque. Comes in, it's a big angle. It's, It's almost a mile. You know how lights at night can look. It's a long way to that little section there where Tramway is. And having worked here now since 2013, and being in this office at all hours in late, and being around when there's no lights on, when I've shut the light off, there's no cars, there's no car lights that come in here. Those red taillights and white taillights back there in the corner, they are a long way away. Does that help?
Yes, it looks like everyone in the chat gets it now.
Okay.
And then here are a few guesses I thought you'd want to hear. Could it be interdimensional beings? Seems like a ghost to me. Maybe someone doing remote viewing.
Yeah.
Someone said, I saw something similar in my kitchen last year. I'm sure it was a guardian angel, or at least I hope so. And
yeah.
Someone else guessed that it was a jinn.
Yeah, see now, all of us, myself included, we all need to study a whole lot more books coming to this from firsthand experience. What, through history, where do we find descriptions of moving pieces of fog? For those of you who have watched it going over 20 times, it's really odd. It comes in, it's very dim, and then it seems to brighten and change shape, and it literally glows on a part of that top bookshelf. Let's see if I can get this back. There's the top bookshelf, and then goes up, and it all happens in 24 frames, 1 second. And when you watch it over and over and over again, several people in email use the same word. It seems deliberate, as if it's on some kind of program, observation, who knows. And I find this fascinating. I do not find this scary in any way. I would like to understand it a lot more. And so maybe we all need to study more about the jinn and the idea of people passing to another dimension, coming back, and coming in a fog or this translucent, smoky look that I know when in the 1800s, famous for the seances and the idea of the photos that have been taken by people sometimes monitoring a seance. And there will be whoever is the person leading the seance may be trying to make contact with somebody who has passed on for somebody else at the table. And they will have this white, gloppy material that will show up in photographs. It could be the same thing. So for those of you who have knowledge, whether academically or other, about this whole issue of what is the fog-like, smoke-like substance associated with seances to contact the dead, angels, angelic spirits, that the white has been long associated with something positive. I'm going to assume it's positive, but I must tell you all, I have gotten several emails that have really made me think, saying that in the world that we live in now, in which there's remote viewing and technological spying and all of that, that it might have been just an indication of some kind of a technology or something that is monitoring me and what I say and what I do. And if that were the case, I have been living with some form of monitoring and phone tapping and computer tapping for so long now. I used to get angry. I used to get angry at being an American living in a country where I and others who were dealing with UFOs, that our phones would be tapped and we would be followed and photographed and monitored. And today, it's hard even to feel angry anymore. It's like that the world has changed so much, and that if we put our energy into that, we wouldn't have time to do investigations, which is what I want to keep doing. I'm working on some fascinating stories right now that I hope to share with you in the future. And so if it was monitoring, maybe somebody out there can show me what the technology is that would come in looking like smog or fog or smoke, and how would it monitor? If there are those of you who think it might relate to maybe my mom, my dad, a grandmother, somebody coming. This is another very interesting part of the emails I've been receiving. Got a whole file full. Several people who have had an experience with their, let's say, somebody coming through, a father, a mother, a grandmother, or something like that, that they all feel that when there is this, like you can see it, that it is protective. And so as we go forward, let's think in terms of high strangeness. Doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be spooky and scary. That high strangeness may be just a part of this universe we don't understand, and that we're trying to learn, and that there could be all kinds of things trying to protect us. And that if we begin to learn more, and we keep having these discussions, and maybe it will strengthen us, and maybe it will increase our ability to sense the positive protection that could be coming from technologies or coming from something that falls into that category of guardian angels and spiritual protection. So there's something about all of this that's happening that I think is extremely valuable, and I hope you all do too. Lori, what about another question?
Somebody would like to know if you have had any synchronicities since this has happened.
Why I'm laughing is I have had a life of synchronicities. My life and how things work and come together and what happens. Sometimes I think it is like I'm in a theatrical play and I just don't understand the script, but everybody around seems to, everything moves in and out and around like it's all being woven to something. So synchronicity is something that is so common to my life that it would be hard for me to say that something stuck out this particular week. Another question.
Is Linda still hoping to interview Mike Battaglia about his near-death experience?
Yes, and in fact, I think we're going to try to do that, and I will put it in a series that I'm going to try to be doing from all of these emails that I'm gathering. And fascinating interview, and it's a question of time, because what I have been doing recordings for is my upcoming coast on the 25th of this month. I think you will find that it is a mixture of both the extremely important in terms of our current world, and then fascinating insights into Charles Hazard's. And so then I'll have to do Michael Battaglia's for a next report.
Now this one's a little bit long, so here we go.
All right.
Does Linda think TTSA is talking with Congress, and if anything will come out of it? Also, is there any news on the metamaterials? Why does she think this is a reason for mutilations?
The metamaterials are a reason for mutilations? Maybe you could ask for somebody to clarify that last part.
I think they're still online, so they will.
Yeah, try to clarify that last part. I think that To the Stars is trying to do something extremely important. If they can get labs and scientists to work on materials that have allegedly come from crashed craft that are not made on this planet, and that we can learn about how they're made and what they might do, and be able to accelerate our own science, which is their goal. It's definitely important, and I wish all of the scientists and the people at To the Stars nothing but the best in their efforts to try to make this transition from what has been black world secrets to white world and execution. I really think this is important and hope that it succeeds. Now, have you got a clarification on that last part?
Yes, it was a separate question. Why do you think? So it was, what do you believe the reason is for all of the recent mutilations?
Oh, okay. But about the metamaterials. One of them that they have, I think, is so important. I hand-delivered in San Diego to their offices of To the Stars, is the bismuth, magnesium, zinc layer that you can read all about it at earthfiles.com. It's in my book, Glimpses of Other Realities, Volume 2. I have done since 1996. I've done dozens and dozens and dozens of reports on radio and at Earthfiles about my efforts to find out what the bismuth, magnesium, zinc material is. And now To the Stars has the piece that I transferred to them, and they are going to be doing investigations. Hopefully, the science, as science keeps evolving in parallel track with materials that maybe we weren't able to do an investigation 20 years ago. It was 1996 when the bismuth, magnesium, zinc showed up in the mail to Art Bell, and Art called me and said, I want you to investigate this, and I've been trying to get to the bottom of it from 1996 now to 2018 and evolving. So the fact is that in 1996, when I called an exotic metals manufacturer, and I believe it was in New Jersey, that summer when we got this material was, see, the aluminum came in April of 1996, and then the bismuth, magnesium, zinc came a few weeks later, I think in May. So that's when I started in the summer of 1996, seriously trying to find out what was it made of, what could it do, and got in touch with this exotic metals manufacturer. And when I told him, by then we had gotten energy dispersive spectroscopy, and we had gotten the diameters, which were 1 to 4 microns in pure bismuth, and 100 to 200 microns in a magnesium zinc that was mixed 97.6% magnesium and 2.4% zinc. And those were alternating layers like a torte cake. And when I asked the exotic metals manufacturer where or how or who could I go to that would work with magnesium zinc in one layer and pure bismuth in another, alternating. And he said, no one. You can't do that. Nobody can put bismuth and magnesium together. They will delaminate. They would never hold together. And there was nothing that was gluing, quote unquote, or holding together the layers. It was a nanotechnology that was happening at the atomic and molecular level of the layers. And so that set it apart right then. Well, all of the rest of the 90s into the 2000s, the people who said, well, we'll get Los Alamos or Sandia or somebody in Area 51 or somebody can make this. We'll just duplicate it and then we can study it. To all of my knowledge, no one anywhere on this planet has been able to duplicate the layered metal. So this is a very interesting material that hopefully now, with more advanced technologies, that To the Stars will be able to find out more and report it. I certainly hope so. I think it's just a fascinating material, and to find out exactly what it did and how it worked would be, and to confirm that would be worthwhile. Now, I have reported in conferences, in presentations, at Earthfiles. I have reported that 2 years ago, a physicist who told me he had worked at Area 51 in the 1970s said that he had worked on a 6 foot long, I think it was 6 feet by 3 feet or so, a sheet of the bismuth, magnesium, zinc metal underground at Area 51. This is his story. I can't prove it. He couldn't prove it, but I'm telling you what he said. And he said he came to understand in the work that they were doing that the bismuth, magnesium, zinc was the outer skin of wedge-shaped like a piece of pie, not necessarily pure line triangle, but kind of wedge-shaped, maybe with curve to the sides, and that the bismuth, magnesium, zinc made up the entire outer layer of the wedge-shaped craft. Then, in between was a lot of thousands and thousands of very thin, what he called fibers. He said more sophisticated than what we call fiber optics today, but along the same line, I guess with light running through all the fibers. And then there was an inner skin. And he said that was the pure aluminum, which Alcoa aluminum on the first shipment back in 1996 that we got in April. It turned out that all of these little ovals and squares and these, like they had been cut out of something bigger, Alcoa did a test and said it was about 99.9% pure aluminum. And this physicist told me 2 years ago that what they studied at Area 51 underground was that the aluminum at the atomic level had intelligent placement of monoatomic iridium, and that the two skins separated by these, I'm going to just call them fiber optics, that when they were working together, that gravity could be neutralized. It would be like taking gravity out of the picture at the point of the craft. And that's why they could move 90-degree angles and all of this, and that we aren't dealing with, like humans inside of these craft that do 90-degree angles at high speeds. They are androids that have been built specifically to be the pilots of certain craft. And now we get into this whole complex area of artificial intelligence. How much of what interacts with humans on this planet is actually an original prime intelligence? How much of it are androids? How much of it are clones? How much of it are robots? This is a big area that has to do with the unidentified aerial phenomena. And I think very few people fully understand any answers to that, but that we're dealing with a wide spectrum of intelligence. So that's where, no matter whether or not what the physicist told me was true or not, this would show you that at least there is a lot of complexity in these materials that were sent to Art Bell and me back in 1996. And the sender was an Army sergeant. He phoned me in Philadelphia, where I lived at the time. He never phoned Art. He phoned me because I was doing the investigations and the research. And he said, I remember that he said his name, but that I was never going to be able to use it. And I wrote it on a piece of paper, not expecting this phone call. And probably it wouldn't have mattered whether I had it or not. He said that he was heading off to Iraq, and this would have been 1996, that summer, and that he didn't know if he was going to return, and that he wanted me to know that his grandfather really had served in this special corps retrieving bodies and craft in New Mexico, and that his grandfather had really left the metallic pieces that he had sent us in a box with a diary, and that the letters, that you can read all of the letters full, nothing's edited out, at my earthfiles.com website. You just do a search on the word bismuth and it'll come up everything that I've written about this, and you can see all of the letters that came with this fascinating layered metal that nobody has ever been able to duplicate, nobody fully understands, and that to the stars, this is one of the metal pieces that it's going to try to understand better with better lab and equipment than we had 20 years ago. So that's a positive. Now, mutilations. I've lived with trying to understand animal mutilations by, as law enforcement said back in 1979, creatures from outer space. And at first, I was nervous about it. I never felt really scared. What overwhelmed my nervousness was my curiosity and my desire to understand the facts and the truth. What could possibly be the reason that something from creatures from outer space, as law enforcement said, would be taking animals around the world, large and small, up beams of light, as some eyewitnesses have seen, or lowering in beams of light, meaning a technology we sure don't have demonstrated to us anywhere around the world by human technology. What are these beams? That many people, they won't stand in front of a camera and tell you that, but they will talk to me, talk to a few others, talk to a few sheriffs, if they've been in their, maybe their ranch house, and the dogs bark, and they go out and here's a beam of light that's coming down into a pasture. And they're either seeing an animal lowered and scares them, they won't go out at night, they wait until the sun is coming up, they go to where they saw the beam come down in their pasture and there's a mutilated cow. No blood, no tracks, because it's put down there. And it's already, the excisions on the animals then are clearly being done somewhere else before the animals are put back, which would explain why there are no struggle marks in the ground from hooves, why there's no fluid or blood on the ground or on the excisions. It's all happening someplace else, and the animals are being put back. Well, right there was, in my first deep discussion with Sheriff Tex Graves up in northern Colorado, and looking at his 266 color Polaroids of animals mutilated that he had taken himself from the beginning of the 70s, and I'm talking to him in September of 79. And he was the first, but he was not the only person in law enforcement who had the same question for me. Linda, why would the animals be returned to be found? And that is an excellent question. And that is a question that has haunted ranchers and law enforcement since the 60s, when at least public stories about animal mutilations without blood and the same excisions and no tracks began being reported in a variety of places. And they probably was going on back to the beginning of the 20th century. Why would the bodies be returned if the tissue and blood and fluids have already been taken? Why would they be returned? And now you get into this difficult area of agendas and the relationship with something that has been haunting this planet for millennia, that in the 60s was referred to as the alien presence or alien presences on our planet. If the alien presence or presences want us to know that something is there and that it can do anything it wants to, and there's nothing we can do to stop it, it's a form of intimidation. What would be the reason for intimidation without coming to us straightforwardly with a handshake and saying, we live on this planet too, and we need certain genetic material from the animals that are grown on the surface, and we'll make a deal with you, we'll do a trade? Why didn't something like that happen? If it's always been separate, if humanity has always been treated as something to manipulate, monitor, and harvest sperm and eggs from, what is the motive and the agenda of that which does the harvesting and the manipulation? In my third book, Glimpses of Other Realities, Volume 2, I have a section about floppy disk communication with a man who was working for the National Security Agency and another who was working for the Defense Intelligence Agency. In the book, I refer to them as the writers. And there was a period of time when the writers, through my colleague and friend Ray Boucher in Nebraska, a Protestant minister, and he also worked at the university in the graphics department. He was an intermediary between the intelligence analysts and me. And they wanted my book, Glimpses of Other Realities, Volume 1 is the book that they had first. And then I wrote about everything that happened in Glimpses Volume 2 4 years later. In their floppy disk first communication to me, there was one sentence that always has stuck with me. The non-human entities that we are dealing with are neither benign nor neutral. So we're back to agendas, intelligences that are apparently cohabiting our planet in some way and have been for hundreds, thousands of years. And we are the surface species that they choose to taunt, manipulate. And in some cases, without question, something has healed people. There have been positives to the human abduction syndrome. So it's mixed. It's mixed like so much that we struggle with as humans on Earth. We are mixed. The alien intelligences are mixed. But as Lynn Buchanan, the remote viewer, told John Burroughs and me on Phenomena Radio 3 years ago, that when they did remote viewing of life in the universe, they came up with this big mixture. But he said with great strength of conviction, we have allies. There are advanced intelligences who truly care about the survival and the evolution of Homo sapiens sapien, us, we humans. If we do not advance more rapidly, if we do not stop fighting and killing each other, then our fate may not be good. But if we can advance, if To the Stars can make breakthroughs with science, with various artifacts from alleged UFO crashes, if others can make advances and start pulling us more rapidly into an age where we will have settlements on the moon and settlements on Mars and be working out to get out into our solar system, that advancement there may start taking pressure off of some of humanity living on the planet, which then, hopefully, would end the wars. And it is as if something is watching and monitoring, engaging. Are we moving more rapidly? Are we going to evolve as an intelligence? An intelligence that those that are advanced, monitoring, and trying to help us insist for us to survive, we have to stop warring with ourselves. We have to advance spiritually, physically, mentally. So I feel energized by that. I love this planet. I really care about my fellow human beings. And I think that the vast majority of humans really do care and want humanity to survive. And maybe that's what is being worked on now from other dimensions to help us evolve rapidly and to stop having wars. And on that note tonight, Lori, I'm going to close this session out with a hope to all of you that we can keep expanding this audience. Tell everybody that you know about these Wednesday get-togethers and these wonderful, wonderful email communications we're having and the social media through Lori, and that we are trying to expand our own sharings and knowledge in some of these subjects that are not talked about generally, and that maybe we can expand and keep expanding. Help me expand this dialogue that could be so important to everybody getting stronger, so that when that headline comes, we're not alone in the universe. Nobody's shocked. Nobody is afraid. Everybody is just curious and wants to have a handshake. See you next week.